Hi, Courtney. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, and thank you for being here. The best thing for me about Instagram is discovering the amazing talent that is on that platform. I stumbled across Courtney's page, and immediately I was in awe of her illustration, animation, and character design. I'm excited to hear about her background, her art, and her webcomic series, The Smiths. Before we begin, Courtney, where can people see your work?
So, as you mentioned, you can find me on Instagram. It's underscore Courtney underscore LUV. Find me on my website, CourtneyLovett.com, or you can find me on Facebook, Twitter under the name Courtney Lovett.
Awesome. You guys should definitely check out her work. I want to start off with The Smiths, your webcomic. What a
Sure.
positive, well-executed design from the characters, the stories, down to the logo. Can you tell us a little
Thank
more about this
you.
project?
Yes. So the Smiths, it's kind of like my baby in a sense. Ever since I was in, I'll say like towards my last 2 years of college, I was trying to figure out like, well, what do I want to do? Like, what do I want to create? Like, what is something that really speaks to me and what I want to see when it comes to entertainment, when it comes to, and, animation specifically. And I just thought about it and I thought of like everything I'm seeing is I want to see people that look like me and not just look like me physically in terms of on the outside, but also sound like me and kind of sound like where I come from. So the Smiths is basically it's a simple concept. It's literally about a family, just a normal family, a normal Black family based off of where I come from, which is the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So it's based on people, like the characters are based on people in my life. The stories are going to be based on like some of the experience I've had growing up. And my goal with it is just to promote basically like Black joy, like, or just joy in general. I feel like sometimes with some of the content nowadays, specifically when it comes to Black audiences, there's almost this emphasis on that it has to be about like social stuff or, politics and stuff. But, which is good because it's good to know history. But I wanted to shift the focus to something where it's like, well, let's just talk about something beyond just like what we look like on the outside. Let's talk about like something that's more uplifting and a bit more normal, quote unquote, just something that sounds a bit that's different. We haven't really seen much of that. So that's where it originally came from for me. And yeah, again, the characters are based off of people I know from my life. So that's how it happened.
When I'm looking at it, what I really
hmm
find so inspiring is you capture this feeling of that family and the dynamic of the
hmm
family. And you're such a great artist. I don't know if anybody can just execute like this family dynamics when you have to be able to show how expressive they are, how they are
hmm
as the interaction between the husband, wife, and the kid.
hmm
And forgive me, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the names of the characters, but what I get
hmm
from it is you evoke so much emotion with that. It's fantastic. And so I wanted to ask you
Thank
this.
you.
No, absolutely. As a content creator artist, do you think
hmm
that artists should really wait for a publisher, a company, or anybody else to really wait before they actually let a project go? I mean, I like how the fact that you just put it in your own hands and put it on your website. Should more
hmm
artists do this in the future?
You know what? That's a really good question. And to be completely honest, pretty much living in that right now. So I don't even know how much I can say about it that would be like super helpful or accurate because I'm in the middle of doing this. I just put it out there. It's honestly because it's been on my mind. It's been in development for over 4 to 5 years. And I was just thinking like, well, I could wait for a publisher. I could get it somewhere out and say like, go to Hollywood and let Hollywood do it or pitch it to a few companies but I think what's cool about it is that I like the fact that I have creative control over it now because if you do, surrender it to a company, sometimes they get the rights and they have their input, which is fine. I think the spirit of collaboration is amazing. But for me, I had this like super need. I really just needed to get it out there. And I needed people to see it and to connect with it because I feel like I was mentioning earlier, that we're kind of starving for this kind of content, just something that brings a more uplifting side. So, yeah, the only thing I would say is one thing I was sure to do before I even put it out there was make sure it's protected. So that is the
Sure.
advice I can give to people, is to make sure you copyright your stuff, make sure you trademark it if you need to, because that's one of the biggest things I did before I created the page. And I just created the page like a few months ago. So that's really it. It's really just like, you just gotta take a risk if you feel comfortable with doing it. I did. I felt comfortable with doing it. And I was like, well, I just want to get it out there because what I want to do is build a following around it so that maybe it can get some level of attention, and then maybe somebody would notice it and be like, what is this developing over here? Let me talk to this artist. I mean, as you have reached out to me. So like, that's really all I can say, because again, I am like living in that right now. So time will tell whether I made the right decision when it comes to putting it out there right now.
Okay, let's transition to your background. I'd love to know about what inspired you to become an artist.
Sure. So I started at a very, very young age. I feel like I picked up a pencil as early as I could. And the thing I remember drawing first, or I should say my earliest memory of drawing, was literally copying my sister, because both my brother and my sister are artists as well. They're more into the graphic design field. So they do like more design work for advertisement and marketing and stuff. So I'm more into like the entertainment, like cartoons and, illustration and things of that sort. So with us is we would watch cartoons all the time. And my sister, my older sister, would draw whatever's on the screen. And one of the first things that we did was draw the Powerpuff Girls. And yeah, so it was just drawing that over and over and over again. Like even when my sister, I found that there came a point where I was drawing what I saw on TV more than my sister was. She was still doing it, but it became less so. But then for me, I just kept doing it. Like I can't even count how many pictures I drew of the Powerpuff Girls. Like it's crazy. And then I started branching out, like all the Disney movies we used to watch. I started drawing those characters, and then like SpongeBob and all these cartoons I used to watch. So at that point, I kept doing it until I got to second grade, when my second grade art teacher caught wind of my talent, essentially. And it's so interesting because when it comes to like my talent, for the longest time, drawing, which is something that I did, I didn't even consider it a talent or just something that I was particularly good at. It's just something that I enjoyed doing. So
you're extremely good at it. I'm being honest. I look at a lot of work.
Thank you. Yeah. So I just like, I didn't consider it like a talent. And I feel like that's kind of how it is with a lot of things. It's like, when I was talking to my friend who's a singer, and she didn't realize that she was like an actual singer until somebody else pointed it out to her, or multiple people pointed it out. So that's when I started to get a bit of an idea of that I had this particular talent, when other people started to notice. And one of those people was my art teacher. My art teacher, who not only taught in school, but she also had a separate program outside of school where she like trained artists that have a particular talent. So I was enrolled in that art school, NCC Art Studios, More Than Conquerors Art Studios, for 11 years, all the way up into my senior year of high school. So I had training that entire time in the foundations of art. And I did everything from pencil drawing to silhouette drawing to painting to charcoal to color pencil to pretty much any medium you can think of, to clay, all different things. And then I guess like in high school is when I started to get serious about it. And when I was like, yeah, I would like to do this for a living. So I started to take my craft very, very seriously. And then I eventually went to college. I went to University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where I majored in visual arts and with a concentration in animation. And then I graduated in 2018. And then it was kind of just smooth sailing from there somewhat. Well, that's not entirely true. Like there was some challenges, but art, because it can be a bit challenging finding something in this area where I live. So I was able to do freelance from the time I graduated to now. And then I've gotten book deals, work with small businesses that need like anything from like a logo to a character illustration to even like product design. So I've done a bunch of different things, but my heart is with anything that has to do with visual storytelling. So that deals with anything in the entertainment industry, cartoons, illustration, character design, storyboard, anything like that, that just has to do with telling stories. I love telling stories. So that's it. That's my foundation, essentially. That's how I got interested in art.
Let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. And I'm being dead honest when I say you're that good, because I see a lot of work. Why aren't you working for Disney, for instance? I'm being honest. Like, I see you have the anatomy, you have all the art that shows expressionism in the characters' faces. You have your spatial awareness. You've put in a lot of time in your craft. It shows. Is that something you want to do? Do you want to work for a studio like Disney or Pixar, or is that even something that is not in your goals?
That's a good question. And to be completely honest, when I graduated from college, it wasn't initially, because my gears shifted. For the longest time, it was. Like, when I was young, I was like, because I was always inspired by Disney and Nickelodeon and all these different shows all these different companies that had such an influence on my love for art. And funny enough, I was able to do an internship. They call it a Nick-turnship, which is really hilarious, at Nickelodeon Animation Studios. I did it in 2017. It was amazing. It was an amazing opportunity. I got to work on a show. Well, I wasn't working directly on it, but I was basically shadowing and doing production work for a show. I think they released it on Netflix. It's called Glitch Text, which is, a very unique looking show. I haven't seen something like that in a very long time. So it was a great experience. I got to meet so many different people. Then I found that when I got back to school for my final senior year, I don't know, I was kind of in a weird place where I was like, I don't really know if I want to do that. It wasn't like it was like a bad experience. Like, it was an amazing experience, but I just had to really ask myself, like, well, what do I want to do? And then during my time after I graduated, that's when I started to think of like the Smiths and think of everything that is. So to answer your question, yes, I would. I'm still open to going back out there to California to work at these studios or do everything like that. It's very competitive. It's very difficult to get into, I will say. So you'd be surprised. Like, there have been a few things I've applied to over there, and I didn't get it because they said either I didn't have enough experience or I was lacking in this area or this area. So I still have some work to do. I really do. Like, those artists are absolutely amazing. So yeah, that's really where I'm at right now in terms of where I want to go. At this point, I'm just trying to do the best I can and, keep developing what I'm working on, which is primarily the Smiths. Like, keep at it, because that is something that is near and dear to my heart and I want to continue to develop. But yeah, I'm open to going over there whenever COVID lifts up or whatever's going to happen in the next year. So yeah, my trajectory is very up in the air at this point.
Well, you have a lot of talent and you have a lot of options and your future is bright. So I'm looking forward to what you're going to do next. Let me ask you this other question. For people that think that your style is just one particular style, what really, really surprised me in a good way was that I was looking through your Instagram, like I said, and I saw this piece called Passing By. And I said, oh my goodness. So Courtney can do this style, which is, it's so difficult to do. But then you do a piece like Passing By, which is really detailed in its digital art. It really floored me. I'm like, wow, you can do so many different things. Talk to me about this particular piece and what it means. And I want people to definitely stop by your Instagram page and look at this piece, because I think it's done very well.
Sure. You mean Passing By, that realistic? Yes. Okay. Yeah. That piece took a very long time because I I went through a period. I believe I did that in, I think it was like 20, because when I posted it, it was something that I did a while ago that I started, and I stopped doing it for a minute, and then I came back to and finished it. And I think I finished it around like either 20, I think it was 2018 is when I posted it. But I was really working on it in like 2016-ish, and then I didn't, do it for a while. But I'm saying all that to say, like, throughout my college years, which was 2014 and 2018, when I started off, especially when I was doing digital art, I had this thing of like, oh, I want to see how realistic I can get with this medium. So I was drawing a bunch of portraits of people, like celebrities. And if you scroll through my IG, you'll see like at the bottom when kind of, because there has been like an evolution of what I focus on when it comes to my art throughout my Instagram. Like I have stuff all the way back to like, I think it's like 2015 or something like that. But yeah, I was so focused on realism. So to answer your question, when it comes to style and like how I can kind of shift, it's really all thanks to my training. It's really thanks to mainly all those years I spent at NCC, because she gave me, and by she, I mean our director, Mavis Turner, she gave me the tools to basically learn the foundations of art, like the different elements, which I'm sure you're an artist, like, like things when it comes to the basic elements are like line, shape, color, space, all of that stuff. And then some of the other elements when it comes to like composition, color theory, and all these other things that are extremely important. So when it came to digital art, I switched over to digital art in 2014. That's when I first tried it out. There was a learning curve, I will say, because it takes a minute to get used to the software. But I will say that the skills that I learned traditionally translated very well to digitally, because it's just art skills. It's not necessarily skills that are specifically for traditional or specifically for digital. Now, there are differences. Like there are certain techniques that are different in it. But if you understand the foundation, and you understand the basic elements of art and why things are the way they are, and when it comes to realism, when it comes to stylism, when it comes to cartoons, if you understand the foundations, anatomy, all that stuff, you can do any style. So that's why I try not to get too caught up in the idea of developing a style, because what I find is my style, quote unquote, is basically my artistic eye. Like, it's just how I see the world. And therefore, I see the world in many different ways, and I see things in many different ways. So that's why if you look at my art, it's not really, these things don't, like my pieces don't really look the same. Like compared to other users I find on like IG, they have a kind of like a consistent look, style, and theme going about their work on their IG. But for me, I like to try many different things. It's not really that. There's consistent themes in my work, but there's not like consistent styles. I like to try many different things.
And thank you. I think you answered a lot of questions I was going to ask about the transition between digital and traditional art. But going back to this piece, though, is this like two people that were passing by? Is there anything deeper than what I'm seeing here? Or is there a meaning to it?
So actually, yes, I was, this is going to sound kind of embarrassing, but I had a crush on this guy, and it was basically inspired by how we saw each other at least once a week because we were both in the organization. There were times where it's like we became somewhat friends, but we didn't really become close to the point where it was like we could like I didn't feel comfortable like reaching out to him specifically, like a text or a call or anything like that. But whenever we were around each other, it was really fun. It was really nice. So it was just this whole idea of like we just kind of pass by each other. We have a good time when we meet, but we essentially pass by. So I just thought about that in a sense when I was drawing it. And also this picture in particular, like that's how it started. But then I developed a story where it was like maybe two people who used to be together or lovers or whatever it is. They just are strangers at this point. They pass by each other. But then again, he looks back or he looks her way, kind of, because she is in the background, like walking away. And I even thought about doing, and I never did it, I thought about doing a kind of like a companion piece where it shifts the viewpoint and you see the girls.
I read that. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. I may come back to that. Like, that's very interesting. But yeah, so that's essentially the story. It's basically like these two who used to be very close, and whatever way it is, romantic, friendship, whatever it is, and at this point, they just drifted apart.
Check out that piece. It's absolutely stunning, and typically good art comes from something that is just deeper than just, I want to just draw something. I knew it has something there. Let's go into, if we can, you've said you've done a lot of different things. I see you're a book illustrator. You said you've done some graphic design work. Let's go into book illustration. How do you get an opportunity like this?
So I was very, 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 very fortunate that one of my, a woman I used to go to church with, she reached out to me via Instagram, actually. That's another thing. The Instagram is great for opportunities. Like, I've gotten most of my client work through Instagram. So yeah, if anybody's hesitant with doing that, don't hesitate. Put your work out there. Like, seriously, put your work out there. Just like a public service announcement. Don't say no to yourself. So, okay. Yeah, she reached out to me in 2019, last year. And she was like, hey, I have this idea for a children's book. And I was wondering if you would be interested in illustrating it. And now I have never done a children's book before, but it's something that I've always wanted to do. So I literally jumped at the idea. I was like, yes, when do you want to meet? Let's talk about it. Like, when do you want to do it? And looking back on it, I learned so much through the experience, because looking back on it, I really didn't know what I was doing. Even now, I'm still learning a lot about it. I'm still breaking into it. But yes, I really wanted to do this, no matter what the pay was, because truth be told, it wasn't as much as it should have been. But still, I just really wanted to do this for me. I really, really, really wanted to do this. And it was very hard. It was challenging. Like, the glamour, or like the idea of creating your own children's book, was really appealing to me. But once I started working on it, especially when I got to like the midpoint of it, where I was on like my 10th page out of like 20, and I was like, I am getting so sick of doing this. And I was just like, yeah, so it's a hustle. It really is a hustle. And it really requires you pushing past your limits and pushing past the strength of what you call motivation. So it's more so of like, it's a mental game, really. It's like, you have to think about it like, oh, instead of saying, oh, I have this number of pages to do, you have to think about like a daily thing of like, oh, you know what? Let me just get this section colored today, or let me just get this page drafted today. Set small goals for yourself. So that's what really helped propel me into finally completing the book, which was released in, I believe it was April of this year, actually. So, and from that, I didn't expect the reception I got from it, and I didn't expect so many people to reach out to me after it. But I literally, from there April until now, I am not even exaggerating when I tell you, I feel like I've gotten at least 50 requests for book illustrations. Like, wow. I'm not even exaggerating that number. I think it's been about 50. It may have been more. But yeah, and it's just like, I have taken on additional ones. Like, I have 2 I'm working on right now for 2 different clients. So yeah, it's crazy how it happened. It wasn't really a guaranteed avenue. Like, I can't even say like, I did this and which led to this, which eventually led to me like landing a book deal or anything. No, it's just literally a matter of like, I knew somebody who just had a need, and I fulfilled that need. And from that need and the completion of that need sparked a lot more different opportunities and needs. So that's how it came to be with book illustrations for me.
For people that want to get into book illustrations and be a book illustrator, I don't want to know hard numbers, but just when you get a project like that, are you pricing it per page? Are you pricing it as a whole? Like, how are you actually trying to determine your value?
So I do have rates, and they have increased because the more work I do for people and the bigger clients I get, the more value I'm putting on myself. So sure. At this point, Children's books cost anywhere from $7,000 to $12,000. And that's not necessarily atypical. Like that's something that really is general for when I say that, I mean, I'm not just paying me, but I'm talking about like paying for publishing, paying for all these other different components that you need in order to get your book out there. One thing I will say for people who are getting into book illustration, whether you are an illustrator, whether you are an author trying to get a book published and hire an illustrator, or whether you are both, you are just trying to not only write the story, but also illustrate the story yourself. Do your research. There's so many different resources that you can look up to get more information on how to create a children's book or just a book in general. Please do your research. It's very, very, very important. I've learned so much because, again, I went into the first project blind and I didn't know anything about it. And there were so many mistakes I made when it came to the illustration. But these next few books, I'm much more informed and I'm much more aware of how these things are supposed to look. So again, I would say do your research. There's Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI. That's a really good resource. You just look them up. They have a bunch of different information packets and I believe it's free. I know that I'm a member of it, so that's why I have access to a lot of those things, but I think there is some information that you can get from it without needing to be a member. So yeah, do your research and also keep practicing, keep working on your craft, whether you are a writer or you are an illustrator. Keep going because illustration, again, is not easy. It's something that takes a long time. So you also have to think about like how much time you need in order to complete it. Not just how much time you need in order to complete it, but also what you have on your plate currently. So you have to really think about, everything, all of those different things, and then set your timeline, set your dates. So for me right now, with the current workload I have, I give at the bare minimum of 4 months before a due date. Typically, I really require at least like 5 to 6 months for a children's book, but I can crank it out in 4 months. And at that point, if it's any sooner than that, then of course I will increase the price, or I may not even take on the project depending on my workload. So yeah, that's my advice for illustrators, authors. Just do your research, I can't count how many times people have reached out to me and expecting to get a book for $1,000. I'm like, no, that's not gonna work. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
So insightful and great advice. That was a lot. That was awesome. Let me ask you this. I see here that you were also a digital art teacher.
Yes, I am.
Are you still currently, or was that something you did in the past?
Mm-hmm. No, I am still currently a digital art teacher. And funny enough, at the same studio that trained me, More Than Conquerors Art Studios, the director reached out to me last year and she was like, hey, we are looking to launch our digital art program. So this is a brand new program that me and my brother, in collaboration with her, developed. So we developed this program for these students. And we've gone through, the first unit, I think, was in portraits. The second unit was in cartoons. And now we're in a new unit now. It's been amazing. I love teaching. I've always wanted to teach. And that's because I love kids and I love young people. I love interacting with them. I love just hearing their stories. And I love their imagination, especially young kids. I love seeing like how their minds just fly. And because again, I'll always consider myself a storyteller. So, but I feel like kids are natural storytellers because they can like talk and and they just create these like wild, outlandish, imaginary things. And I sometimes get my ideas from them in terms of, what they come up with in their heads. It's amazing. So what I want to do is what the director did for me. She fostered that gift for me and made me fall in love with art. And I want to be that for another child. If I can do that for one child, I would die happy. So yeah, teaching has always been in my trajectory. However, I will say, I did not think that I would be doing it as quickly as I'm doing it now. Like I said, my trajectory in terms of like my career and like how things have happened is definitely been very different than what I expected, which, that happens typically. But yes, I thought that I would go over to, Hollywood. I would like get in the studio, work for however many years, and then come back at some point, maybe even get my master's in education and then teach for like the rest of like maybe even teach college or something like that. But I'm very like blessed that I can say that I'm teaching right now and I'm learning so much. I'm like, as much as I'm teaching them, I feel like I'm learning from them as well, because they're exposing me again to new ideas, inspiration. So yeah, I love teaching. I love teaching so much.
And let me ask you this question, because there's a lot of young artists out there that when they get older, they'll have a slew of different opportunities. They can be a graphic designer, a web designer, a concept artist, an illustrator, and, a UI, UX designer. I can go on and on. How do you know if you're a young designer, you should be doing digital art, or if that's what you want to do? Like, what advice do you give to young artists that want to get into digital artistry?
So it's funny because like when you first started off, I thought you were going in a different direction. But I will say this before I answer that question is try everything. Like, don't limit yourself to one particular path. Like, I would say if you see something like digital art, go ahead, go for it. If you like graphic design, go for it, which is technically digital art. Or if you want to do like painting, or like if you want to do like clay or anything like that, just try it out. Try many different avenues. Like, don't limit yourself to one particular thing. Don't just kind of like say, oh, I just want to do this one thing and I don't want to stray from that path. Because you'll find that once you start gearing into other opportunities, you'll find that, you have skill sets and things you didn't even think about, or you didn't even think that you would even acquire. I would say the same thing for me. When I got out of school, I started doing graphic design work for people, because people weren't, especially around here in the DMV, it's a lot like marketing and business. People are in need of logos. People are in need of just like motion graphics, animations. People are in need of, like web design, which I still need to dabble in myself. I do want to learn web design. So hopefully that's something I can do. But okay, to answer your question about digital art, I would say, going back to what I said before, is I would encourage you to, before you venture into digital art, learn traditional art. And I think that's extremely important, because yes, you can learn a lot of the techniques traditionally if you just go straight into digital art. But I feel like with digital art comes a sort of freedom that you are not necessarily allowed in traditional. And what I mean by that is, in traditional art, you only have a certain amount of supplies. Like, you're very limited. Like, you have a certain amount of, pencils, a certain amount of paints, a certain amount of colors. And it requires a bit more of your creativity in order to achieve whatever goal it is you're trying to achieve when you are making a piece of art. However, in digital, in theory, depending on what programs you have access to so many different tools. You are literally given like every single paintbrush, every single like just canvas, any size, any type of art, like animation, like you were just given like a world of supplies, a world of colors, a world of all these different things. So, and it can be overwhelming, and it can also lead to mistakes if you don't know what you're doing, or just developing bad habits if you don't know what you're doing. So I would encourage anybody who is first starting off, or hasn't even like tried art before, but they're interested in digital art, just try traditional first, get the basic techniques. There's a bunch of YouTube courses online. Like, if you don't even have to go to a school. There's a thing called YouTubeversity, which I like to call it. YouTube. There's so many different videos, tutorials, beginner tutorials that you can watch online that will allow you to, learn the basics and learn what you need to learn. And then at that point, speaking to those who feel like they've had enough of traditional training, when you go into digital, it's a very different medium. You have to think about things in different ways. However, it's very fun because, again, you have access to a lot of different things. You are not limited per se to a certain amount of materials. So you can kind of do almost whatever you want. Again, this is depending on what programs you have. But I would encourage you, if you're looking for an avenue to start digital art, if you have an iPad, download Procreate. It's very cheap. I think it's like $11 for the program, and it allows you to do so much with that money. That's actually what our students are using in our class right now. They're using Procreate because it's a very easy, accessible program. Now, if you don't have an iPad, I would encourage you to get, like, if you have a computer in your house or a laptop that you can hook up a tablet to. So there's cheap tablets online. You just got to look on Amazon. But yeah, so in terms of like the technology, Procreate is a great way to do it, or just like a small tablet that you can plug up to your computer and just start messing around. That's how I started off, with a very small tablet. Now, in terms of digital art, when it comes to techniques and stuff, I don't really have any advice when it comes to that. The only thing I would say is, and I have to remind myself of this, don't stop drawing traditionally, even though you can draw digitally. And what I mean is, keep sketching your sketchbook, keep trying different things traditionally, because sometimes I find that with digital, you have your good old safety net, you have your undo button, and I'd be like spamming like Control Z, Control Z, Control Z all the time with working digitally. But I find that if I keep doing that, I'm not exercising that muscle of being intentional about what I draw. I'm being intentional about drawing correctly or drawing accurately and like getting the basics down. So do not stop drawing traditionally, even though you have access to digital tools. So that's really all the advice I have in terms of traditional and digital art.
That's awesome. Now I'm going to shoot you some rapid fire questions just to get to know you, Courtney. So what type of music do you listen to when you're drawing?
When I'm doing art, funny enough, I listen to instrumentals, soundtracks from movies, scores from movies, usually music without lyrics, because sometimes I can get so caught up in, singing the song that I get distracted. So I like to listen to like scores from movies, instrumentals, soundtracks from video games, soundtracks from shows I've watched. So yeah, that's what I love to do.
Great. And name me some artists that you think that people listening to this should know about.
Okay. So I'm just gonna name a couple that I really love on Instagram, just because because the other people I know are like celebrities, and I don't think they really need too much. But so some of the people I know on Instagram, there's an author / illustrator who inspires me the most at this point. Her name is Vashti Harrison. She's a children's book author and illustrator that I really love. She has dope work. She's like collaborated with Lupita Nyong'o with one of her books. One of her other collaborations has gone on to create those characters that she created, turn into like a short film. I think it's eventually going to become a show. So she's always doing like really dope work. There's another guy that I really love. His name is Joshua Leonard. He's creating a series kind of similar to what I'm doing, in a sense of like, he's creating these characters, this concept, this world. It's called Team Supreme. I think his handle is @I'm Joshua Leonard. I really love what he's doing because he's creating like this world of superheroes, but superheroes that use basically their disabilities as a superpower. So it's a very cool, unique concept. Let's see. In terms of, I think, there's so many.
Sure, I understand.
So I would just shout out those two, because those two who I'm the most excited about at this point.
And what are your hobbies when you're not doing art?
Again, as someone who considers herself a storyteller, I love reading. I love watching shows. Like, I love watching shows and like analyzing them and like picking out parts where I really, really enjoy. It's like one of my favorite things to like listen to reviews of movies, reviews of shows, people who are like critics and things of that sort, just because I love engaging in people who are passionate about storytelling. So let's see. Outside of that, I love to, I don't know about love, but I do work out quite a bit. So you'll find me doing that. And I love just spending time with my family, especially now where, we're kind of social distancing from everybody. I just love spending time with my family and just chilling, watching stuff, or just like just doing whatever. So yeah, that's mainly what I do.
Final question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you define success?
That's a good question. How do I define success? I define success as impact. And impact more so of not money, not accolades. I define success as touching other people. It's the main reason why I am a storyteller and why I'm so passionate about this medium is because there are so many different things that I've watched or I've seen or I've read that have literally touched me and literally changed me. And I want to be that for somebody else. And in some ways, actually in a lot of ways, what I'm doing right now, teaching, is doing that. So if I can just touch or help or be a guiding hand for a child or even an adult, I do teach some adults, or just anybody, if I can just help them in whatever their journey is as an artist or otherwise, that to me is success. Success is defined by my impact on other people.
Great answer. And Courtney, I want to thank you for sharing your creative journey, and what an awesome art journey that was.
Thank you so much for this.
Absolutely. Continued success. Lastly, could you just tell everybody again where they can see your work?
Sure. You can follow me on Instagram _Courtney, COURTNEY _LUV. You can find me on my website, CourtneyLovett.com. That's Lovett without an E at the end, LOVETT. You can find me on Twitter and Facebook under the same name, Courtney Lovett. And also, before I forget, because I didn't do this in the beginning, follow The Smiths. It's a separate Instagram account. It's _The Smiths Family. That's it.
We will do that. Thank you. And until next time, everybody, take care and bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.